Welcome to the virtual lunch. Today is Friday, November 11th, and this is virtual lunch number 680. Our guest today is Vincent Miraglia, an associate general counsel for labor and employment and the chief ethics and compliance officer at Sylvamo. And this is part of our series on defensible, affordable results with Proteus Discovery Group. Vinny, how are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. So I began as a labor and employment lawyer at a DC office of an Atlanta law firm back in 03-04 timeframe. I eventually moved to Atlanta and helped open the Atlanta office of McGuire Woods. One of my main clients at McGuire Woods was International Paper. And one day my contact at International Paper called me and said, I have good news and I have bad news. The bad news was that they were taking all of their litigation in-house and they'll no longer be sending it all to McGuire Woods. The good news was that they'd like to hire me at IP and manage their litigation in-house. And so we decided to load up our family and move to Memphis. The plan was, Memphis for maybe a couple of years. Maybe I can handle that. And almost 20 years later now, I'm still in Memphis and very happily. And so now I am at Sylvamo. It is a spinoff of International Paper Company. We started just about a year ago. It's a completely independent company from International Paper. We took the paper side of International Paper, interestingly enough, and frankly, a lot of the international as well. And so maybe they'll change their name. I'm not sure. But in any case, we're a paper company with global business around the world. The great thing about my experience at IP was the ability to try different things. And so, as I mentioned, I started out as a labor and employment lawyer when I came in and when I was hired. But I believe my first trial at IP, which was probably 6 months after I got there, was a CERCLA EPA case. And so immediately did something brand new when I got there. And then I helped manage all types of litigation, truck accidents to contract disputes, antitrust, but I also was able to continue doing labor and employment. After I got to IP and to Memphis a few years in, my wife was expecting twins. And I decided as a litigator, I traveled quite a bit and decided I would try to minimize that if I could. And I asked, there was an open role in the IT group for the lawyer for the IT group. And I asked if I could make that move and they readily accepted. And I learned something new at that stage. And so I had never done any sort of contracting. I'd never done anything like that. And frankly, hadn't, other than dabbling with e-discovery on the litigation role, didn't know much about IT either, but took on the role, learned it, and was able to take that on and handled it fairly well. After a few years in that role, I was asked to handle other roles. I worked in the corporate role. I did some mergers and acquisitions. I helped with global sourcing. And toward the end of my time with IP, I was the business lawyer for the papers business. And so when IP decided to spin off its papers business, the new general counsel asked if I would serve as the associate general counsel for labor and employment, which sounded great, right up my alley. And then couple of seconds delay, he said, and chief ethics and compliance officer, which was frankly probably the only role I hadn't had at IP. And so it was another brand new role that I was going to have to learn. And so it was useful to me to have had that sort of experience at IP and the ability to move and change roles while I was at IP. And it's sort of handling the same thing now. So I find myself in the familiar place of utilizing all of the experience that I gathered over the years and learning something new. And thankfully, I've been able to build a great team with significant experience here at Sylvamo in the ethics and compliance space. So it's been fun kind of building our new program. The key to the ethics and compliance role and what makes it easy at Foundation is we've got kind of a mantra that we always do the right things in the right ways for the right reasons. And the CEO says it, it's in his mind, it's a mantra that we say, and it really helps when people are making decisions to have that in their mind. And it sort of makes the role of the ethics and compliance officer a little easier, at least when people are making decisions with that in mind. I know there's folks that kind of like what they do and they're going to continue doing it for their entire careers. And that's a path if somebody wants to take, so be it. And there's certain probably roles that more suited to that, where you're the intellectual property lawyer and you've got that skill set, and it's probably something that you're going to stay with. And you probably can vary even within that role. But to the extent you have the opportunity and you're interested, go out there and find something new, find something different. It makes the practice of law that much more interesting. It certainly makes me a better lawyer for having done all of these served in these other roles throughout my career. It's made me think about different perspectives, definitely built relationships from an in-house perspective with so many other parts of the business. As a labor and employment lawyer, you deal with the HR folks primarily, and then you usually deal with somebody that does something wrong. They don't usually stay with the company for very long, and so you don't build that relationship. You do build it with some of the managers that are involved, but it's a fairly narrow group of people. But you move over and, for example, the IT role that I've had, in most companies, there are probably as many IT folks as there are anything else. It's such a large part of everybody's business now. Getting to know those folks and getting to know how they do things, just ability to work with somebody is one thing, but also, their contracts and what they need, and, data destruction versus how long you keep something, records management. There's so many different things that you learn that I didn't think of as a labor and employment lawyer. And it's certainly built on itself. And so as the business lawyer for the papers business at IP and serving now, even, it's just brought me so much more depth to what I do on a daily basis. So, it's interesting. When I came in-house, I realized I was handling the litigation in-house. And so I was, like I mentioned, traveling all over the country, going to depositions, going to hearings, et cetera. Over the years, they actually moved and sent their litigation back out. And I was less involved and less aware of what was happening in some of the cases. And so outside counsel would handle the deposition, and then they send me either the transcript or a summary or something along those lines. Over the last couple of years, where because of the pandemic and because of the accessibility to forums like this, doing a deposition online was easy, and it was almost the norm, or it's become the norm. And so I've watched more and more depositions over the last several years than I had over the several years prior to that. And it's definitely made me more familiar with the cases that I'm managing. Even though I might have outside counsel handling it, I'm very familiar with what the demeanor of a witness is. And those sorts of things have really helped from an in-house perspective understand what's going on. I still think I'd rather have my outside counsel go to the deposition and truly see and get to know the parties that they're deposing and that sort of thing. I still feel like that's a benefit if you can. And so I like to have sort of both roles. I appreciate the ability to be able to view as an in-house counsel, but I still want my outside counsel to sit down across the table from the individual if I can. I mean, just fundamentally as a lawyer, the law firm experience is who I am. It's what I learned. It was when I was a baby lawyer, it's how I learned how to walk. And so you work in a law firm. I had great mentors who taught me how to practice law, not just analysis and of the regulations or the law, but writing the memo and the brief, but also the ability to digest the information that comes in and calmly explain things to an excited client about a particular situation. It has really been probably the biggest benefit to my in-house career, where you've got people just knocking on your door with a question about a contract dispute or a potential discrimination or something along those lines. The ability to bring that in, and even in my mind where I'm excited and mad or whatever, the ability to really digest that and calmly explain something to somebody else is what I learned as outside counsel, because outside counsel is getting paid to calm the client down. And that's the reason the client calls their outside counsel, is because they want to be able to understand what's going on. They want to know that somebody else is handling it. And so having learned that from some really great partners at the law firms I was at, really has helped me as an in-house counsel do the same thing for my clients. And so now they're more willing to come to my office and explain the situation, figure out what's going on, and get calmed down, I guess, as they're dealing with a particular situation.
Vinny Miraglia, everybody. What a fantastic discussion. I've always appreciated your insights, and I'm so grateful you joined us. I'm so grateful also to Produce Discovery for supporting this series on defensible, affordable results. And I hope everyone has a great weekend.